Panspermia and the stoned ape theory. Oh my God, we got some really cool stuff to talk about today on Microdose U. I'm so glad you're here with me. I am Dr. Dave. Welcome.
Enter the world of magic mushrooms with Microdose U.
Hey there, how are you? Welcome back. Microdose U, Dr. Dave here. When I first started this podcast about probably roughly 3 years ago or so, I never dreamed it would take this type of a tangent into really deep, weird stuff about mushrooms and life and the origin of life and all kinds of weird stuff. But like I've said, on this psychedelic journey that I've been on, microdosing, I mean, the first year, and I didn't set this timetable, but pretty much the first year, these psychedelic mushrooms totally took care of my depression and anxiety. And then the second year, we moved on to becoming more mindful, spiritual, understanding, or trying to understand more what's, what is everything? What's going on? What are we involved? What is this? What is everything? And then the third year, more working on my physical health, which has been like incredibly changed from these mushrooms. And like I told you on the previous episode, just maybe a couple episodes ago, it's not that the mushrooms themselves made me feel better physically every day, but they got me interested in certain things about my body and about health that I learned that then in turn has increased or improved my physical health in a big time way, big way. But today that's not the topic. The topic today is panspermia, something called, and I never knew about this until just really recently, and I want to share with you. And also the stoned ape theory. You may have heard about this, you may not have, but I'm going to share on my kind of like low level, because like I said, I'm not really, other than being a retired doc, I'm not a scientist. I don't really understand space, quantum physics, all the really really deep stuff that you've got to be like a genius to understand. I don't really understand it, but I understand it maybe at a low enough level to kind of explain it to you, what I've been reading, what I've been immersing myself in. It's quite wild. I just want to make sure, if you're brand new to me, make sure you check out the show notes on every episode. I've got links in the show notes here that will help you further your studies into psychedelic mushrooms, or whatever you want. And there are ways that we can help you. I can help you one on one if you're so inclined. You don't have to, but there are ways we can do that as well. And also my website, microdoseu.com. And it's simply microdose with the letter U on the end of it, microdoseu.com. Check that out. Got some really good resources there. So we got a lot of stuff to help you all. A lot of stuff. I can't speak today either. A lot of stuff to help my nakama. And if you're not sure what nakama means, look it up in a Japanese dictionary, English Japanese dictionary. Just, you can spell it out in English, nakama, and you'll figure out quickly that we're all together. We're colleagues. We're a tribe. We're family. We're friends. That's kind of what nakama loosely translates to in English. Okay, but anyway, the subject for today is panspermia. We'll start with that, and it's a theory. It's a scientific theory that mushroom spores, so spores of the, spores of the little kind of, it loosely seeds. They're not really seeds, but they're kind of like mushroom seeds. To put it again, I like to put things in really really simple terms. The theory, or the thought process, is that these spores or seeds are not just confined to the planet Earth, but they're all over the universe. They're just like spread. They're all over the place. Kind of like, think about this. Like, on the planet Earth, everything is based from seeds, and from seeds. Like, you watermelon, and you spit black seeds on the ground, and then more watermelon trees for. I know they're not trees; they're vines, right? But you know what I mean. Everything's based on seeds. I mean, especially this time of the year, there's pollen, which means like the trees and the vegetation, they're spreading their seeds everywhere, all over the place. And we as animals, humans, and all types of animals spread our seeds, and that's how we procreate, and that's how there's life on the planet. It just keeps going, and so it's all about the seeds. But if we ever think that seeds are just confined to the planet Earth, I mean, I think it's kind of narrow thinking. Because think about this: panspermia is the concept that these spores are so hardy and non-destructible, they can withstand the forces of intergalactic or interplanetary travel. Picture that. Just pretend it's like a big video game, and these spores are just like all over the place. Everywhere you go, there's spores floating around in the air, the universe. And the reason I'm saying that this panspermia theory is that spores are all over outer space is because people think that they latch onto to different vehicles, if you will, not rocket ships. Although it's been shown that I think on space stations there's been mold growing, which of course mold originates from spores, right? So it's another, not, I wouldn't say proof, but another kind of like validation that these spores are not just confined to the planet Earth, but they're everywhere. So just imagine the spores. It's like a big video game. Spores are floating around everywhere, and what they do, they latch themselves onto, uh, things like meteors, meteorites, uh, things like that. And when there's a big explosion, it's kind of like these seeds are being thrown and projected all throughout the universe. And they travel. Sometimes they travel like light years away. But the thing about spores is that they're so strong and so hardy that they can actually bury themselves inside of a meteor. And when you think of a meteor, meteors are really hot on the outside. But I did a little bit of research into this, and the inside of a meteor, it's actually cool. It's not hot. So imagine these spores are kind of like they're all over the place. They're burying themselves inside these meteors, and when big explosions take place, they're just part of everything, and they get thrown into the universe all over, traveling light years and trying to find substrate. And substrate is just a fancy scientific word for something where something can grow. Whether it's a petri dish or a planet, it's something that can grow spores, seeds, I guess bacteria, anything. I guess viruses too. I guess humans could be a substrate for viruses, right? But my point is, this is like just one big explosive video game. Imagine, and I wouldn't have been able to imagine this pre-microdosing. So microdosing and using psilocybin just kind of expands the brain, and it allows me and you to imagine things that we possibly could not have even imagined before. Now, I didn't come up with this theory, panspermia. I mean, very smart people are talking about this that, don't know me and I don't know them, but they're talking about it. They've been talking. It's not new. It's been talking about it for quite some time now. But it seems like it's becoming a more and more accepted theory that mushrooms, or the precursors to mushrooms, spores, are not just from planet Earth, but they're all over the place. And it's not just a coincidence that we've got these mushrooms growing on our planet because they were given to us from some type of intergalactic travel. And it sounds really weird, and you might think I'm a wacko now. I don't know if you do or don't, but I'm not a wacko. I'm just somebody that my mind's expanding, and I'm trying to figure out everything, like what's going on. But a couple episodes ago, I did something on, are we living in a simulation? And if we're living in a simulation, does it make sense that all these things are happening in the universe? Like spores are being tossed around from, light year, being thrown, in light years away from where they originated, and who even knows where they originated? But it doesn't really matter if we're in a video game or a simulation or not, because it's happening anyway. So it doesn't really matter. Like I was talking to somebody the other day that I work with. One of the people I'm helping with with what's going on in his life, actually, and he asked me if I think that we have like free will. Like, can we, like, is everything we're doing in our lives, is it pre-programmed? Like, some people believe it is pre-programmed, that we don't have free will. And my answer to him was, well, it doesn't really matter, because even if we believe that we have no free will, that everything's been programmed, does that mean you're going to stop making decisions and stop having goals and stop like moving towards things that you want to see happen in your life? No, you're going to live your life exactly the same way. So it doesn't really make any difference whatsoever. Like, it doesn't make any difference if we find out we're in a simulation, which I think we might be, but it doesn't change anything inherently, because we still have to live our lives. We can't just say, oh, I'm in a simulation, so I'm just going to do everything differently now. No, we're going to live our lives the same way. And if it's a simulation, it is, and it probably is, but it doesn't really change the way we do things. So think about this. Think about panspermia. These spores are being thrust all over the universe and probably beyond, maybe into different universes. I can't even comprehend that part. But they're like seeds. They're like seedlings being thrown around, and many of them have landed on Earth. Thus, or therefore, mushrooms, fungi, mold are born. It's just not a coincidence. And mushrooms are not a coincidence at all either. There's a purpose, there's a reason mushrooms, and in particular psychedelic mushrooms, there's a reason they are here on our planet. There's a reason. Terence McKenna, I think, is the one that came up with the stoned ape theory. Are you familiar with that one? Stoned ape theory. That back in the prehistoric days, before we were even human, we were apes, right? And that's how we evolved. We were apes, and psilocybin mushrooms were all over the place. And so we as apes were eating and devouring these things. And what that did is it allowed the brains of the apes to expand very quickly and become much more intelligent and ultimately morph into human beings. That's the stoned ape theory, that psychedelic mushrooms played a tremendous part in the growth of the brain. And I think that could be true, because again, just in my 3 years of microdosing, and I'm talking about just microdosing, I think my brain has grown, and become more curious, and I think my memory is better, and I'm learning things now that I never learned couldn't or didn't learn in the past. So, and I'm just a tiny example just from microdosing. Imagine these apes were just eating mushrooms one after the next, eating large doses of mushrooms, and their brains were just on fire, going crazy, good crazy, good way. And then you had in the Renaissance area, but Renaissance was in the 1600s, I believe. I never did well in history either in school. I don't think I did well in too many things in school, actually, until I get into the later years of my college, and I really buckled down and got all A's and got into dental school. But before that, I was kind of a goof off. I just didn't really take anything seriously. So I didn't do well in history. But I think the Renaissance was probably in the 1600s, and that was a time around that I don't know, was that Galileo, Copernicus? I don't know, but these people were brilliant astronomers. And do you think it's just coincidental? No, they were probably eating magic mushrooms and expanding their brains and coming up with all kinds of things in the 1600s that I wouldn't be able to figure out today as a modern human in 20, right now as I'm recording this, it's 2024. Hopefully, hopefully if my podcast succeeds, you'll be listening to this and it might be 2028 or 2030. I don't know. I'm not sure. But as I'm recording this, it's 2024. So that's the stoned ape theory. The psychedelic mushrooms played a tremendous part in the growth of the brain from primitive apes to human beings. And again, and then the Renaissance. And then think about this though. Think about even in the 50s and 60s, how psychedelics, I think with LSD and even mushrooms, psychedelics were becoming very popular in the 50s and 60s. And is it any coincidence that that's when we really got into this space travel? When was it? 68, we landed a man on the moon. Before that, we were, shooting off rockets into space with, some were manned. But then think about this. Why did it all stop? Why did we lose interest? Well, did it have anything to do with the quote unquote war on drugs where, drugs, psychedelics became illegal, bad? You get a heavy conviction or jail time or whatever if you're caught using psychedelics. So a lot of that came to a crashing halt. But now, in the recent, let's just say the past 10 years, there's been a definite renewed interest in psychedelics. And is it any coincidence now that space travel is taking off again? No pun intended, but taking off again. I mean, Elon Musk he's admitted that he thinks psychedelics are great for mind expansion and the brain. And so he came up with SpaceX, and now the space program is back on again. I don't know if it's coincidental or not, but it's something at least to really think strongly about. Psychedelics are mind expanding. Look, I was enamored by the Beatles in the 60s with what they did with what psychedelic drugs did to their music. I mean, I still listen to the Beatles these days and listen to songs such as like I Am the Walrus or Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, or the album, maybe either even Revolver was probably their first like kind of psychedelic album. And then I'm sorry, Rubber Soul, and then into Revolver. That was like the beginning of their psychedelic era. And it was just, the music was pure genius, and you could tell the change in the way they wrote their songs and the way they produced their music from once they started using psychedelics. There was just a very obvious change. So I am definitely of the opinion that psychedelics are not only mind expanding, but very, very beneficial for the brain. I think it I think it make us smarter. Not only will it help take care of mental health issues such as depression and anxiety, but I think again it makes us more alert about our physical health, and I think it makes us smarter. I think it makes our memories better. I've told you I've been taking Japanese lessons. They say that Japanese is one of the most difficult languages for somebody with English as their first language to learn. And I'm not young. My brain is not like a sponge like it used to be, but I'm doing okay with it. I'm doing all right. I mean, I'm committing the time to it, and I know it's going to take quite a while, but I'm okay with that. But I don't know if I would have been able to do this before psychedelics. I don't know if I would have been able to. And microdosing has gotten me more interested and aware of learning another language. This is none of this is a coincidence. Not come on, none of it is a coincidence. It all comes into play. So that's why I'm sharing this with you today. Like again, when I first started this podcast 3 years ago, I did a ton of episodes on here's how you microdose. Here's how many milligrams or how many grams I think you should start off with. But then it morphed into something deeper and more mind expanding, I think. Where will we go from here? I don't know. I'm still going to do plenty of episodes on the basics because I always have new people and they always want to know the basics. How do I microdose? How do I start? All that. And so we're going to continue that. Of course, I look. I just put an episode out. It was a couple of weeks ago, I think, on the 2024 guide, absolute beginner's guide to microdosing magic mushrooms. I try to do that once a year. So we did the absolute beginner's guide. So if you're not sure, and if you're new to this, check out that episode. It's just a few weeks ago, so you'll easily find it here, easily. And I'm committed to helping you. I'm committed to helping you reach your goal. But again, it's really interesting to learn other things about these mushrooms and what they can do and maybe why they're here and what kind of impact they've had on anything from primitive, like apes to human beings and more. It's a crazy world out there, Nakama. It's crazy. It's weird. We don't know what's going on. Nobody really does. But I think I'm definitely closer to understanding than I was 3 years ago. I really think I am. I truly believe that. But in my lifetime, we'll never figure it out totally, unless there's something that we don't know. Maybe when we pass, maybe we find out everything. I don't know. I don't know that because I included a little bit of that in a couple episodes ago about are we living in a simulation of what happens when you die? I talked about all of that. And I don't have the answers, but I have thoughts. So that's fair enough, I think. So I hope this episode at least gets you thinking and how powerful, not only how powerful psychedelic mushrooms are, but are they all over this entire universe and further? And I think there's a pretty darn good chance the answer is yes to that. A really good chance. At least the spores are all over. We'd be naive. We'd be really thinking narrowly to just think that these spores are only confined to the planet Earth. I think that's almost impossible. They can withstand a lot. UV radiation, speed, light, heat, a lot. Probably more than what I just said, but a lot. Okay, I'm going to let you go. Remember, brand new episode every single Wednesday and Friday if I can help it, if I can do it. Every Wednesday and Friday. If you have any questions, you can reach me. Just look in the show notes. They'll show you how to reach me, and also my website, microdoseu.com. I am Dr. Dave. I love you, and I really appreciate you being with me because, as I say, without you, I wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being with me today. I'll see you on the next episode.